All right. So hi, everybody. Like Andrew said, thank you so much for joining us for this webinar, Law Chapter Operations for PAD Officers. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Emily Baranowski, and I'm the Director of Events here at Phi Alpha Delta. I'm the main contact here at the office for our law school chapters. And so I'm here to help you guys with really whatever you may need. That's our whole goal here at the office, is to help you out. I do want to say thank you to Andrew for helping us set this up and for helping to moderate. We're really looking forward to this, and we hope you guys enjoy it. This presentation is the latest installment of our webinar series, and it's the first presentation that's specifically designed for law chapter officers. We're going to cover some basic topics about the best practices for running your chapter, how to recruit and get new member materials, and plan your chapter events. Like Andrew said, we'll have some time for questions at the end, and we're also hoping to plan future webinars that are going to go into more detail on some of the topics that we're covering today. Think of this as kind of a crash course for running your chapter this fall and setting up a productive spring. I'm going to reference a few different documents in this presentation, all of which are available on pad.org. And as Andrew said, we're recording this presentation. So if you want to share it with your fellow officers, other chapters in your district, please feel free to do so. Leadership, as the quote on the screen notes, is about service, especially in an organization like PAD, where our purpose is service to the school, the profession, and the community. A strong PAD leader and any chapter leader really should remember that tenet and goal while working to better themselves and their chapter. Get into the basics of effective chapter management. I want to start by talking about officer roles and duties. In a Phi Alpha Delta chapter, there are 5 main officer roles, and each officer serves an individual purpose while working together to lead the chapter. Our officer titles are Justice, also known in other organizations as President, Vice Justice, which corresponds to Vice President, Clerk, corresponding to Secretary, Treasurer, and Marshal. As it suggests, the Justice is the main executive officer of the chapter. As the principal officer, the Justice is responsible for taking the lead in chapter meetings, spearheading chapter events, leading the initiation ceremony, serving as a main point of contact for the chapter, and making sure each officer is fulfilling their respective duties. The Vice Justice assists the Justice with all those chapter operations. It's good to think of them as the Justice's right-hand person. In the event that the Justice is absent for any reason, the Vice Justice is the one who steps in to ease operations. Many Vice Justices also act as the public relations or historical officer for the chapter, which usually means keeping track of pictures, old membership records, historical chapter materials, that kind of thing. The clerk is the main recorder and communications officer for the chapter. Chapter clerks should keep meeting minutes for every chapter and executive board meeting, keep the official chapter roster, and communicate events to the chapter members, executive office, and any chapter advisors. The treasurer's duties are usually the most self-explanatory because they oversee the money. That includes any chapter bank accounts, fulfilling any SBA budget requirements, and for PAD specifically, making sure that the new members have paid the international initiation fee before being initiated by the chapter. Finally, the marshal's main responsibility is to maintain proper order in meetings and events. What this means on a practical level could be a few different things. For instance, if there are members-only events, the marshal is the one responsible for making sure that only chapter members are admitted. Or during elections, making sure that the only voters in the room are actual members in good standing. If a meeting gets loud or off track, the marshal should be the one to get the room in order. The marshal should also be the officer responsible for all of the chapter's property, like the banner, recruitment materials, and ritual materials. When it comes to the PAD ritual, which we'll talk more about later, the marshal should ensure that all the other officers are prepared for their parts. Those are the 5 main positions that most of you guys are probably familiar with, that most of you guys hold, but they're not all inclusive. Chapters are welcome to create additional positions and committees as they see fit. An example could be a recruitment chair, a social media chair, SBA liaison, committee chair for a specific chapter event. Honestly, the options are limitless. A lot of officer duties can overlap, and we work with them in very broad terms. So a key trait of all successful officers is communication. It's important to all officers to be clear on what their exact duties are, especially if there's an event or program that multiple officers are going to be working on. Communication is also essential for working with our office, your district leadership, your school administration, and eventually with your future clients as you guys work as lawyers. Remember that communication is not only giving out information, but also receiving it. Be open to ideas and feedback from chapter members and advisors. Fully read communications that are sent from your school and from the executive office. Trust me, it will save time and help you avoid missing important deadlines or information. We make a strong point to make sure that you guys are aware of all dates and deadlines far in advance. So please make sure that we have your most up-to-date contact information so you're getting those notices. Great leaders are also well organized and possess excellent time management skills. This is especially true for PAD officers as you work with other law students, school faculty, and practicing attorneys, all of whom have extreme demands on their time. Even though the executive board leads and directs the efforts of the chapter, realize that this monumental task does not rest on anyone's individual shoulders. Sharing responsibility and delegating duties is a key best practice. Setting up a committee system, like I mentioned earlier, is one way to share responsibility. It's important to remember that being elected as a PAD officer is not just about leading your chapter. It's really more about gaining skills in life and for your future as an attorney. It's also not just about getting through 1 year in your officer tenure. Part of being an officer is setting up your chapter for future success, and a key part of that is the officer transition process that takes place after elections. The officer transition is the time to hand over chapter materials like the banner, important documents like bylaws or bank account information, and any files or passwords that are critical to the chapter's success. Chapters should hold elections by February 15th each year, and the transition process should be completed by April 15th. So you have 2 months to carry that out. Part of the transition is the District Leadership and Transition Conference, which we're going to talk more about later. Some of you guys are here today listening to this webinar because you didn't get that kind of transition with your past board, or there wasn't a board in place to help you transition into your role. So I encourage you guys, when you're planning your future transitions, to think about what would have helped you when you plan an officer transition and incorporate those aspects into the transition that you lead. Let's chat about recruitment, which is one of the biggest things an executive board will have to tackle. So the first bullet point on this slide asks, when should you be recruiting? The short answer to that question is always. Recruitment should not be limited to the start of the school year or just the fall semester. Recruitment is a constant process. A good goal for recruiting is to recruit enough members to replace those that will be graduating during the school year. But if you can do more, that's great, because that's going to help your chapter grow instead of just staying stagnant. As a reminder, the executive office will provide free recruitment materials to your chapter each semester. There's a million ways to recruit, and every chapter and campus is different. We do have a few key elements and concepts that each chapter can adapt and use in ways that work best for them. The first of those concepts is the foundation, or the identity. That means that you should know what we stand for as an organization and what your chapter stands for. Remember that there's a good chance that students you're speaking to have never heard what Phi Alpha Delta is. Work on your elevator speech, a short 30-second pitch that explains what PAD is, what your chapter does, and what you can offer new members. Concept number 2 is the buy-in, or the hook. So if you want to get somebody interested, find out what they are interested in. And you can develop an idea and thoughts through that conversation and talk in broad terms about how we can make it happen. Using those we terms is really something that's going to help them connect to you and to your chapter. Element number 3 is the handshake. Learn a potential member's new interests and find someone in your chapter that matches those interests. This is part of the sharing responsibility that we talked about earlier. Use all your members as recruiting tools, not just the executive board. Everybody should be involved. You can use members' connections to other organizations on campus, to their jobs, to their clerkships, whatever it may be, to build relationships with other students and the other organizations on campus. Element number 4 is the barrier, and that's actually not a tip for effective recruitment so much as something to avoid. The idea there is to get rid of any barriers while you're recruiting. This is especially prevalent in tabling. It's best to get out in front of the table and approach people, respectfully, of course, instead of sitting back waiting for them to come to you. It's so easy to communicate with people electronically these days. I mean, obviously we're using it now and it's a great tool to have, but it also means that people tend to remember face-to-face interactions a lot more. Take advantage of the electronic means, but also remove the barriers that could keep someone from making a connection with you and your chapter. And finally, the 5th element that we'd like to talk about is the ask or the close. Don't forget to actually ask someone to join your chapter. Recruitment doesn't mean very much if you've talked at PAD and your chapter, but you don't actually ask someone the all-important question of, would you like to join PAD? You'd be surprised how many recruitment presentations we see where that's not included at all. One thing we hear a lot from chapter leaders, especially lately, is that students just aren't interested or they don't see the value of joining. So when you're battling this apathy problem, it's really important to find your niche on campus and figure out what you can provide other students that the other organizations can't. A lot of times that's our lifetime membership or the networking opportunities we offer, but it can also be academic support through an outline bank, community service projects, or just simply having that fraternal connection. That's the buy-in and connection aspects of your recruitment right there. After any recruiting event, make sure you're following up with potential new members to repeat that final step, the ask. Keep the contact list for those you talk to and keep it even after the event or semester is over. Because even if someone doesn't join in the fall, they could join in the spring, or they could join when they're a 2L or a 3L. Your recruitment isn't limited to first semester 1Ls. I know they're usually the easiest for people to recruit, but don't box yourself in and forget about those other classes. Really use your resources to the fullest when you're recruiting, whether you have social media pages that you can post on, making classroom announcements, getting members who are part of other organizations on campus to make announcements to their groups. Whatever you've got, definitely go ahead and take advantage of it. So once you've recruited, we get into the nitty-gritty of PAD membership. Let's start with the basics. Any enrolled JD or LLM student may join a PAD Law School chapter. This includes part-time students, night students, 1Ls, 2Ls, 3Ls, and everything in between. You can also recruit faculty or practicing attorneys. Recruiting faculty is especially simple because those members can join for free. Recruiting attorneys is a really great way to bring your alumni network directly to your chapter. And it's actually something that we're really hoping a lot of our chapters are going to be focusing on over the next year or so. We've recently started Project 500, which is a project to initiate 500 new alumni members. It's not something that is just for alumni chapters. You guys can participate in it too, so keep that in mind. The international initiation fee for law students is $90. This is a one-time fee, and it's good for someone's lifetime membership in Phi Alpha Delta. When you graduate, you're a member for life. We often get questions about members who have transferred from a different law school or who were members of a pre-law chapter. Pre-law alumni, meaning those students who are members of a pre-law chapter of PAD, can join the law chapter at a discounted rate. That rate is currently $70 instead of $90, so it's a $20 discount. We call these types of students senior transition members because instead of submitting a new application, they only need to submit a form online to transition their membership from pre-law to law. Senior transition students are some of the easiest members to recruit because they already know what PAD is and the benefits that are offered to them. You can visit the PAD website for more information about the Senior Transition Program, and for the form I mentioned, you're also welcome to send me an email, and I'm happy to send that information back to you. Students who transfer from a different law school chapter do not need to join or pay the fee again to join your chapter. There's a very simple form online, the Transfer of Membership form, that these members can submit to update their information. They also do not need to be initiated again. All students are encouraged to submit their PAD membership application and payment online. This is the fastest and most secure way to submit information, not to mention it's environmentally friendly because you're not using paper. The PAD website automatically sends a confirmation email to a member when their application is received online, as well as receipts for any payments made. Online applications take about 24 hours to be approved. So if a new member gets an email that says their account is under review, this is normal. It's something that comes up commonly, but don't worry, they're doing it right. The homepage of PAD.org has an easy link to join along the top header there, so it's easy to send that link out over email or even have the application up on the laptop at the recruitment table. In fact, that last photo we saw there's a laptop sitting there on Broadwell Chapter's table, and they have people fill out the application right there. Since every law school chapter is named for a person, not the school, make sure that new members know your chapter name before they sign up. As a chapter officer, you're going to want to know who's joining your chapter so you can initiate them. Official chapter rosters are kept and maintained solely at the executive office, so contact us to receive an up-to-date list of members in your chapter. A lot of you, in addition to getting emails from me this semester, have probably heard from one of our colleagues, Katie Gibbs. She and I are both available at any time to send you guys a membership list, and I'll make sure you have her contact information at the end of this webinar. If you're a chapter that collects local dues, which means dues outside of the $90 fee owed to our office, you're in charge of collecting and recording those payments. We don't handle them, we let the chapters handle that. New member materials known as initiation materials are included in the price of membership. Each new member receives a certificate and pin if they participate in the chapter initiation ceremony. As I just mentioned, you've probably received an email from Katie Gibbs in the last few weeks with a little bit of information about this. She handles the mailing of all chapter initiation materials for our pre-law law and alumni chapters. So we will mail those items directly to chapter officers to hand out to the new members. You have two options for receiving initiation materials. Option one is to receive them before your initiation ceremony. To receive them before the ceremony, all applications and payments must be received at the executive office at least 10 days prior to the. This is so we have time to mail the materials to you. If the applications are not received in that time frame, there's no guarantee the materials will arrive in time for your ceremony. One important note about this, that 10-day deadline does not mean that members can't continue to join your chapter up until the ceremony. It just means that they won't have materials at the ceremony and that we'll send them to you later. You're not required to have initiation materials to hold your ceremony, so that's why there's option two, to receive the materials after the ceremony takes place. If that's what you prefer, that's fine. Just let us know and we'll send the materials the next business day after the ceremony. If you don't have materials yet and you want to hand something out to new members, consider using red carnations, which is PAD's official flower. Let's talk about the initiation ceremony itself. Each chapter is required to have at least one initiation per semester, fall and spring. However, there are no limits on the number of initiations that a chapter can hold, especially because it's likely that the chapter will have applicants later in the semester after the first ceremony. You can initiate these additional applicants in a smaller ceremony or during a chapter event or meeting. I've even been to informal initiation myself that take place in parking lots. It's okay, it happens. We're going to go over the formal ceremony setup now for this webinar, but do keep in mind you can do the more informal ceremony too. And as a quick reminder, applicants must be paid in full before being initiated. So when you're planning your ceremony, each chapter officer should consult the PAD Ritual Handbook. The Ritual Handbook explains how a formal ceremony should be structured, right down to what materials you need, how the room should be arranged, and what each officer should say. The rituals are designed to be read, so it's important that those participating be sufficiently familiar with their parts to deliver them accurately. You might even want to consider rehearsing if you've never participated in a formal ceremony before. You should begin plans for the ceremony as far in advance as practical. Make certain the date selected has minimum conflicts with other school activities and is convenient for all concerned. You should invite your district justice, chapter advisors, any local alumni, and all of your current chapter members. The formal initiation should always be in an actual courtroom if that's possible. In some instances, a judge might allow you to use the chapter, might allow the chapter to use a courtroom outside of actual court hours, or you can use your school's moot courtroom. If that's not possible, just try to secure a venue that exemplifies the professionalism of a courtroom. Let's talk a little bit more about the ritual and the ritual handbook that I've mentioned. It's important to know when we're talking about the ritual that our fraternity is founded on certain core values: integrity, compassion, courage, professionalism, service, diversity, and innovation. It's the purpose of the ritual to preserve these values in concrete terms and ensure their continuity. The ritual is universal among all chapters, and it should not be changed by individual chapters, except, of course, to insert any chapter-specific history or information. The ritual is most commonly used for initiation ceremonies, and that initiation ritual does explain PATH's core values, structure, and history to new members, and it culminates with the oath of membership. However, there's also rituals for opening and closing formal chapter meetings, holding elections, and other ceremonies you might want to hold. We don't have a secret ritual like some organizations do. It's open to everyone, so any member is welcome to read through the rituals, and any guests are welcome at chapter ceremonies. The ritual handbook can be downloaded from the PAD website along with our other documents. As I mentioned before, it includes details on what materials you should have if they're possible for you to get, and it explains how to conduct an informal ceremony, which again sometimes is all you're able to do if your resources or time is minimal. The oath of membership is the most important aspect of the ritual, since that's what officially makes somebody a member of PAD. When someone participates in an initiation ceremony, they are officially a member, and they're going to want to get involved in your chapter activities, which brings us to chapter events and programs. Every semester, your chapter should be hosting at least 2 professional development, 2 academic assistance, 2 recruitment, and 2 social events. You should also have at least 1 community service event, 1 alumni networking event, and 1 fundraising event. As we've already discussed, at least 1 initiation per semester is required to initiate the new members. And you should also be scheduling regular chapter and executive board meetings. These requirements exist to serve PAD's mission of service to the school, the profession, and the community. They ensure our chapters are exemplifying that mission and creating a valuable experience for their members. They're also important for recruitment because at the end of the day, members want to join chapters that are doing things. You can use your events as a recruitment tool by making some of your events members only, assuming that's something your school permits. It's kind of an incentive for them to join. They come to maybe 1 or 2 open events at the beginning of the semester, realize, hey, this is great, I want to keep doing this. Well, you want to come to the rest of them, join us and see what we've got going on. When it comes to planning any chapter event, keep this planning checklist here on the screen in mind. First, what is the goal? As in, what do you want members to get out of the event? 2 is, what resources do you have? Yeah, oftentimes that does mean money, but it also means people. It means venues, it means volunteers. And a great example of that is I know that there's a few chapters who have held professional headshot events. They'll do headshots for all of their chapter members, which is great as you're applying for jobs and setting up your LinkedIn. And so I know chapters who have done this with a member who does photography, and they'll volunteer their time and their equipment. So when the chapter is doing this, it's not costing them any money. They're just having this great event that's either making them money or bringing in new members. And that's a great example of using your resources in a really, really great way. Next bullet point is who will help you. Board members, of course, should be leading an event unless there's a specific committee that's set up to run an event. But consider what additional members you're going to need to help run an event, whether you need an administration person or a faculty advisor, if you need alumni to attend an event or be part of it, or if you need our help from the executive office. Bullet point number 4, how will you publicize your event? Publicizing is in my opinion, so important, not just because of the how, but because of the when. You should really want to make sure that there's advance notice for your events, especially if it's larger and involves people who aren't readily on campus. If you have the opportunity to publicize on campus bulletin boards, in a campus newsletter, I encourage you to do so. Use every option available for you to publicize an event, whether it's a chapter listserv, social media, anything else. There's no such thing as too much publicity, in my opinion. After your event, make sure that you evaluate what went wrong and what went right with your program. That's a really good time to decide if you even want to do the program again. You should be keeping notes on all the little nitty-gritty details of the good, the bad, and the ugly. This is a great way to help future boards too, so that they are already aware, well, all right, we tried to hold this event and unfortunately it went belly up. It did not work out for us. So you guys should, if you're going to try it, try doing it a different way, or consider just picking another event entirely. Beyond those general tips, here's some additional advice that we always want to include when we're talking about planning events. First of all, we highly recommend that each chapter have a signature event that you hold each year or each semester. It's something that your chapter is going to be known for. It'll help you stand out on campus. I think Truman chapter, which is out in District 1 in Washington, does an annual casino night, and they've done it for almost a decade. And even 1Ls coming into school for the first time know about casino night because they heard it when they were on campus for a tour. Everyone knows that that's a Truman chapter event. And that's a great way to really put your signature on something. Schedule wisely and far in advance. Make sure that things are approved by your school. If you're inviting alumni, make sure that you're inviting them with plenty of notice. My personal rule of thumb is 2 months minimum for inviting alumni. This is why we make you guys submit your calendars in advance of the semester starting, just to make sure that that scheduling is done in an appropriate time frame and that you guys are thinking about how you're going to be doing outreach. Take time to evaluate how the planning is going and if you're meeting your goals. I always suggest setting a few benchmarks for what you're going to have for a month out, a week out, a day out, depending on the scope of the event. We also recommend that you mentally walk through the event while you're planning it. This is a great way to ensure that you're covering all the details, since it often brings up things you haven't thought about. We do that here at the executive office for all of our events. We'll sit down and we'll have an all-staff meeting walking through where people need to be, when they need to be there, and it really oftentimes brings up a lot of things that we hadn't initially thought about, which is great. And finally, stay realistic and stay organized. The truth is that not every event is going to succeed, and even the best event might not have the attendance that you were hoping for. We don't overextend your resources. Keep notes, as I mentioned, so that you as future boards will know what works best instead of reinventing the wheel every single year. I also want to mention the PAD Inspiration Fund, which is a program that we instituted recently that provides money to chapters and districts to put on events. So if you guys have an event you're planning and you just feel like you didn't get quite enough money from the school this year, or your fundraising just isn't kind of picking up the slack, let us know. Apply for funding. We are always happy to send out funds to chapters for events that are fulfilling those PAD core values and our mission. Information about that is online, and I encourage you to take advantage of it. I also want to talk to you guys about the PAD regional and national events that we put on. When you're planning your own chapter events, I encourage you guys to consider, incorporating these events into your calendar if you want to participate, or at minimum just being aware of when they're happening. The first one we want to talk about is convention. It's held biennially every 2 years, and it is our signature event. We do expect that every law school chapter will make every effort to be in attendance at convention, and because of that, we have grants and travel stipends to help you guys get there. Convention is full of workshops, guest speakers, professional development and networking. We always do a community service project, And to be honest with you, it's also just a whole lot of fun. It's, like I said, every other year, and so the next upcoming convention is August 5th through 8th, 2020, just under a year for now. And if you're Disney fans, I have great news for you. It's in Orlando, Florida. So pack your ears, and hopefully we'll see you there. Another great event for you guys is the Law School Mock Trial Competition. This is held annually at the end of February. I've been told that we are one of the few competitions on a national basis that does allow 1Ls to compete. And registration for that event is coming up in October. I think you guys should have actually gotten an email from us this morning about the mock trial competition. We just got the dates finalized and we're setting up all of the details. So please let me know if you have any questions about that. Two other events that don't necessarily directly affect you guys but you should know about are the PAD Pre-Law Conference and PAD Day at the U.S. Supreme Court. Pre-Law Conference is an event just for our pre-law students. It's held on an annual basis in Washington, D.C. It also incorporates a pre-law mock trial competition and a law school expo. So representatives of law schools will come and speak to the pre-law students. We've actually had some of our law chapter officers get funding from their school to come and be their school's representative, which is really fun. And it's also a really great way for you guys to get started on very, very early recruiting if that's something you're interested in. That other event, PAD Day at the U.S. Supreme Court, is held for alumni members. It is also an annual event held the first Monday in June in Washington, D.C. at the U.S. Supreme Court. If you guys ever hope or intend to argue a case in front of the Supreme Court, you do need to be sworn into the Supreme Court bar, just as you would be sworn into your state bar. So there's a whole process for that, and we will set up an event and provide sponsor signatures for any members who wish to participate in that. You do need to be barred 3 years to participate in PAD Day. That's a Supreme Court requirement. So that's something that's a little bit farther down the line for you guys, but it's a really good thing to keep in mind, especially when you're mentioning to prospective new members what can be offered to them for their lifetime membership. On the years that we don't have convention, we do a leadership summit, also usually in the DC area. We just wrapped up one this most recent July 2019. I think I saw a few of you guys there, which was great. And that is a little bit smaller than convention, but it is really focused on leadership development, especially for our chapter officers. It's one of the few events that pre-law students, law students, and alumni are all in attendance, in addition to our International Executive Board and to our district justices. Finally, I want to talk to you about the district and regional PAD conferences, namely the District Leadership and Transition Conference. I think some of you have either already had or are going to be having your fall conferences very soon. They're a really great opportunity for everyone in the district to get together and plan and really bounce ideas off of each other, learn some things, get some resources. This year we're also instituting in the spring the District Leadership and Transition Conference. Its primary purpose is to develop the leadership skills of new officers and provide them with the resources to lead their chapter successfully. We really want to make sure that that transition process that we talked about earlier is happening in every chapter and you guys are getting the resources that you need. The District Leadership and Transition Conference is held, like I said, every spring and provides each succeeding group of officers with the opportunity to meet, discuss, and prepare for the upcoming year. The event should be attended by both the outgoing and incoming officers during the spring semester. The intention is that the conferences will be held between that February 15th election deadline and that April 15th transition deadline. So it will take place during that so that you guys can really transition properly. Chapters can also invite any of their members, particularly those members who are interested in future leadership positions. It's a great chance to kind of hit the ground running on that. So as we move into the end of today's webinar, I want to chat about some of the resources available to you in your chapter. The first one is people. There's a lot of people and there's a whole network ready to help you guys succeed. Andrew and I are obviously executive office staff members. We are full-time staff for the fraternity. A lot of us are not lawyers, but we are trained in nonprofit management, communications, event planning, and a lot of other things that you wouldn't even think of. We work with all chapters and are available to send and receive materials, offer advice, help you plan. Literally whatever you guys need, it's our job to help you. That's what we're here for. Our office is open Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. I'm your main contact, but there's other staff members who will focus on membership, like Katie does. I'll focus on our pre-law department, like our great pre-law coordinator, Liz, and more people. I'm sure you've heard from people like Corey or Andrew or Danielle. Another key person who's here to support you is your district justice, if your district justice has one. Not every single justice district has a DJ, and that's okay. We're here to help support you regardless. But your DJ, if you have one, is a PAD alum who works with all chapters in the district and helps advise and support you. They are the ones who will plan the district leadership and transition conference for you guys. DJs are fantastic resources because most of them were PAD officers just like you guys are. So they've done it all. They are around to help. They can tell you what went wrong, what went right for them, and really give you some great ideas. Chapter alumni are another great resource. They can attend events and give you ideas based on what the chapter did while they were there. If there's a local alumni chapter in your area, that's great too. That really draws into working with the other PAD chapters, using your connections. Alumni chapters are always happy to come out and attend chapter events, serve as resources to supplement, staff and district justices. And so I really encourage you, if there's an alumni chapter in your area, reach out to them. I can provide contact information if you like. If you want to, you can also work with the other PAD Law School chapters in your area. Some chapters and districts will work and do joint initiation ceremonies. I know District 11 does that a lot. District 23 does that. You can do joint social events or networking events. Community service, really whatever you want. I'm a big fan of crowdsourcing your resources. So by using and talking to the other chapters in your area, you really get an opportunity to do that. Another resource for you guys is the Downloads Library on pad.org. That is where all of the documents that I've referenced today are hosted. It is hopefully where we'll also have this webinar for download when it is edited and ready to go. We are excited to be making some changes to our website in the coming months, and we hope it's going to be really user-friendly. And we really encourage you guys to take a look and keep an eye on the changes as we go through them. Finally, I include PAD award applications as a resource, and I often get a lot of questions about that, but I promise it makes sense. First of all, the award applications are due annually the first Monday in June, so next year that's June 1st, 2020. The award applications are a great thing to be filling out while you are holding events because they help remind you what you did. It asks, how you can improve on the event. So if you're looking for like a built-in form to evaluate events, award applications are a perfect way to do it, especially because if you fill it out in September, you're welcome to send it to me. You don't have to wait until the beginning of June to send those in. It's also great to have award applications and hopefully receive awards because it's a great way to show your school what you're doing. I do know a few chapters who have gotten a little bit of extra money out of their school and their SBA when it came time for budgeting because they were able to be like, well, we're an award-winning chapter. You should give us a little bit more money. Next year, any of our award winners are going to be announced at conventions. So that's another really great thing to do while we'll be down in Orlando. The least fun thing that anyone ever wants to talk about is policies, but I will talk about them just for a little bit. We talked about best practices for leadership, but overall best practices and universal policies are definitely something we should make sure you guys know about. First is the insurance manual and the planning resources involved there. Every single chapter does have insurance through our organization. So if you guys want to do something off campus and, they need some kind of form or thing like that, just get in touch. I'm sure we've got something. Our insurance manual also has some great planning forms, especially when it comes to risk management. So I encourage you to take a look at that and just make sure that you're doing everything on the straight and narrow. Our fraternity policy manual outlines all of the individualized policies that we have, such as social media, logo usage, hazing and harassment. And if you ever have any questions about those, you are welcome to contact me and Andrew. We are more than happy to go over policies with you guys, answer any questions, and we hope you'll never have to use it, but if in case there is a problem, we do have a complaints process that's outlined in the policy manual. I think Andrew just helpfully linked to our policy pages there if you guys want to take a look at that. And finally, at the end of the day, a lot of what you guys can do is based out of common sense strategies. You're smart. You all got into law school. You're going to be lawyers. And we really do trust you guys to make the best decisions for yourself and your chapter. So just think about, when you're planning events, think about whether something feels right. I really like to borrow one of Andrew's phrases, and I hope he doesn't mind that I'm stealing it. But just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. So, use your heads, and honestly, I think everyone's going to be just fine. All right. That really wraps up the meat of our presentation today. Does anyone have any questions about any of the things that we've gone over, or anything that we haven't gone over that you'd like me to